Today we're covering everything you need to know about black and white photos in Photoshop. Hey guys, welcome to Phlearn, where we make learning photography in Photoshop a lot of fun. My name is Aaron Nace, and you can find us on Twitter at Phlearn. Today we're covering black and white. This is going to be a two-part series where we talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses with shooting black and white, give you guys some great tips, and at the end of each of these episodes we're going to go in Photoshop and actually show you how to get the most out of your black and white images and how to convert those color images into black and white. These days, black and white photography is seen mostly as like an artistic or like a style choice rather than something that you have to do. The original days of using black and white were basically that was your only option. Black and white film for photo as well as black and white film for video. You guys can see even in Hollywood they're using black and white film for their movies. You can remember Sin City, which came out just a few years ago. They used black and white for the majority of the movie just to like give it that artistic style. So the same thing is kind of true with photography. A lot of the time you're going to be shooting in color, but then you're going to be converting in black and white, and that's to give like a little bit more emotion or style and things like that. So it's kind of interesting how the use has changed, where it once was like something you just had no choice over, and now it's something that people use for an artistic or a styled effect. So keep that in mind if you're going to be doing black and white, that you always have that option to create like that additional style. Here's some tips if you guys plan on making a black and white image. It's the perfect time to crank up the ISO on your camera. A lot of people complain about noise. They're like, oh, I've got a lot of noise on my camera and things like that. So if you are in low light, you're gonna get a lot of noise because you have to crank up the ISO on your digital camera. Black and white photos tend to look pretty good with a little bit of noise applied to them. So if you know you're going to be creating some black and white images, don't worry about that. So this is a really great opportunity for you guys to shoot in lower light and crank up your ISO so you can get those cool stylized images. I would always recommend shooting in color and then converting into black and white later in something like Photoshop Lightroom or just Photoshop, which we're going to be showing you later in this episode how to do that. The reason is it's going to give you that option. You'll always have your photo in color if you want it, and you'll have your photo in black and white as well. So shoot in color first, and then you can convert back to black and white. You can't do the other way around so easily, so that would be my other tip. Choose a lens that has a relatively shallow depth of field. Now this is totally just a style choice, but I tend to find that I really like images that have a shallow depth of field when they're black and white. So this is, if you have a 50mm 1.8, 1.4, things like that, try to keep your aperture below f4 if you can, and that's gonna really knock out the background out of focus and create a nice image that's gonna be perfect for shooting in black and white. My last tip is when you're photographing someone with plans on turning this image black and white, keep in mind that you can't really use the difference of color to separate them from their background. So if you were photographing a red subject on a green background, that would pop off really nicely in color, but in black and white, they're both just going to be like a variation in gray. So if you're photographing a light subject, try to stick them on a dark background, or a dark subject, put them on a light colored background, and that's going to give you that nice separation that you want. So we're looking more for like lights and darks here rather than working with color, which makes total sense, but it's just another nice thing to keep in mind. These days, black and white is used a lot of the time to create like an emotion and a feeling. It just kind of works a little different in your brain. So to show you guys the difference that a clip works in color versus black and white, we're going to make a short clip here and show you guys the color version and the black and white version. Now let's check out the black and white and see what a difference that makes. I think you can all agree there was a huge difference between the color version and the black and white version. You might have liked the color version better, that's a totally different point, but you will agree that there's a big difference in how each of them kind of like makes you feel in the mood they get across. So it's another thing just to kind of keep in mind. If you want some of those like generally like somber and softer moods, I would really go for those black and white. So now you guys know a little bit about the theory behind black and white and some of the uses for black and white. We're going to jump into Photoshop, where I'm going to show you guys how to take a color photo and turn it into a black and white. We're going to do a few different ways, and I'm going to show you guys some really cool effects. So the image we're choosing today is from our recent fashion shoot, and I really like a lot of things about the image. The light and dark, the composition totally work for this image, but the color is just a little bit on the boring side. So it's like the perfect image to work for, to change into black and white. And we actually have a pro tutorial where it covers like 3.5 hours of editing on this series. So if you guys are interested in that, we'll put a link on the screen. You can find out more information. All right, let's get into this tutorial here. So we have our subject, and she's leaning against a wall here, and we've got our beauty dish. Basically, there was just a beauty dish camera right, and that's what's lighting our subject. Now, the composition is pretty good. There are a couple things that are just a little bit in the way. You can see the reflection of the beauty dish right there, and basically all we want to do is look right here at our subject. So anything that's kind of keeping us away from doing that, we really do want to get rid of. So that's one of the things we're going to look at changing. The other thing is our composition is pretty good between the center thirds. I'm going to hit C for the crop tool, and that's just going to bring up my crop preview, and then I'm going to click right here, and that's just going to bring up the rule of thirds. And you can actually choose here in your options what you would like to be visible. You can say, oh, here it is. You can choose rule of thirds, grid, diagonal, triangles, things like that. I usually keep this on the rule of thirds. So we're going to go to rule of thirds, and I'm just going to bring this over just a little bit so our subject is, there we go. You really want your intersecting lines here, like this, to be right about where you want your subject to be. If they're right here along this line, that's a pretty good indicator that you have a decently good composition. So a couple of these areas are dark, this side is light. That's usually, splitting an image like that is usually a pretty good way to get a good composition. All right, we're gonna hit this checkbox up here, and it's giving us some information here that we just don't have, but the other cool thing about black and white is you can kind of fudge things a little bit better. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. All right, let's go ahead and get rid of all this area here. The reflection's just not really working for me. So instead of trying to just clone stamp this out, we're gonna take this all down to black, and it's just gonna allow our subject to stand out a little bit better. So just grabbing our marquee tool here, sorry, the polygonal lasso tool, we're just gonna make a selection right around there. I'm gonna grab a brush tool, sample this color, and then just paint right over top of there. And then we're good to go. Okay, so you can see, I'll just turn that off and on. It's like, oh, that's kind of distracting, and now we look right at our subject. We're gonna make another layer, and here I'm just gonna sample this color here, and we're just gonna start painting. It's basically black, it's just a really, really dark color, and we're gonna paint this in here. Now, when I'm in black and white, you're gonna see this stuff really doesn't matter at all. You can even use the clone stamp tool to kind of bring this in and just fill in all the little details. I like using the brush tool sometimes because it just allows me to paint whatever I want, but the clone stamp tool is just a little bit easier. Plus you can keep all your little details and things like that. All right, so we're going to clone this, and in just 1 second we'll have our new composition, and we're going to be ready to turn this into a black and white image. There we go. So you can see that really didn't take too long. All right, looking good. So here's the before with that and the after. And I'm just going to shift click those and group them together. There we go. Okay, so in this episode, we're going to be going over 3 different methods for turning your image to black and white. We're going to do desaturation, we're going to use the black and white adjustment layer, and we're going to use the channel mixer as well. So let's go over the first one. We're going to do desaturate because that's the simplest one, and it's the one I really don't use pretty much ever. So to desaturate, you can't be on a blank layer. So if I just want, I can't create a new layer and go to image, adjustments, and then down to desaturate because it's just on a blank layer. It's saying there's nothing on it. So what you want to do is either apply this to your background layer, which I don't suggest doing, or create a stamp visible, which I would suggest doing. To do that, you can hit Shift Option Command E, which basically just creates a layer that's everything you see on a brand new layer. And now you can go to image, adjustments, and then down here to desaturate. All right, Shift Command U. So basically what this does is just strips all the color out of your image. And it does turn it into a black and white, but what I don't really like about this method is you don't get a whole lot of control over your image. You can't choose if you want the reds to be lighter and your greens to be darker and things like that. So this tends to be the easiest method because you can just hit Shift Command U and it'll desaturate, but I don't use this method a whole lot. The next one we're gonna go over is the black and white. So let's go ahead and turn this off, and I'm gonna show you guys that black and white adjustment layer. So the black and white adjustment layer, you just go to black and white there, and it pretty much does the same thing. Now the nice thing about this is you can choose here where you want your images to be. Like if you want your reds to be a little bit brighter, you can choose to make them brighter. Your yellows to be a little bit brighter, you can do that as well. This image doesn't have a whole lot of other colors in it. We're not really working with blues and things like that. Most of it is like the red and yellow, but you can choose along these lines like where you want these colors to kind of fall into play. So this is a really nice way to do a black and white image. All right, let's bring it to there. The other nice thing is if you did want to add a tint to this, like make it a little bit of a sepia type of image, you could do this as well right here in this one adjustment layer. You don't have to create other ones. All right, we're going to keep the tint off for now because I think it's just going to be a little bit better for this episode. So that's our other method there. All right, the last one we're going to go over is the channel mixer. So I'm going to grab an adjustment layer and we're going to go down to channel mixer. And there we go. So our channel mixer, we're going to click on this monochrome. So basically we're going to have a couple different presets, which I do like here. We can say the infrared, we can go to a blue filter, we can go to a green filter, things like that. Let's hit reset to just get it back to original. We'll click on monochrome again. The output channel here is always going to be gray when you're in monochrome. But the other thing I like about this is it allows you to adjust your constant. So you can start to bring your image way, way dark, and then let's grab our red channel and make this quite a bit lighter. So this is, if you're looking to get some like super high contrast black and whites, this is like the perfect place to get those high contrast black and whites. All right, something like that, and I think we're looking pretty good. So each of them is going to do a little bit different. For the high contrast, I would definitely look at the channel mixer if you want to control and kind of tweak all the different light levels, the black and white filter, and then there's desaturate if you just don't want to use your brain that day. Let me show you the difference between the three. All right, so there's desaturate. You can just see, kind of just get what you get. Here is the black and white, and then using a channel mixer. And I went extreme on the channel mixer, but it's the place where you can go extreme. So now that we've gone over a couple ways in which you can turn your color image into a black and white, we're going to go over a couple effects, including we're going to make a blur, and we're going to create some grain on this image, and then you can kind of see like how all these things that we've been talking about tie together to create the final stylized look. So I really like what's going on here. This is a great looking image. There's one thing that I would like to change really quickly about it. I'm going to see if I can just make this whole area black real quick. So I'm going to grab my pen tool, and you can just hit P for the pen tool. This is just something I just decided to do literally right now. I did not plan on doing this, but I'm going to see if this area, like if I can trace her leg here and turn everything else that's above her leg black. And what I think that's going to do is it's going to really help her leg stand out from the background. Now I might not wind up liking this, but it's worth a try. All right, so basically just making a selection around there, and we have plenty of episodes on the pen tool. Just search for pen tool on Phlearn.com and you'll find a ton. I'm going to right click here and go to make selection. We're going to click OK, and then I'm going to hit Shift Delete, and we're just going to fill that with black on a new layer. So new layer, and let's fill that with black. So there we can see it's just like, okay, all that goes back to black, and then we have our subject's leg just kind of like sticking out from the oblivion there. And yeah, I like that. Why not? I might want to paint that black later, but you have a lot of options like that whenever you're doing a black and white because you're just painting with black and white. It's really nice. Okay, so we're going to create a stamp visible layer. So that's Shift Option Command E for the stamp visible layer. And then I'm going to bring a little bit of a blur into this image. So make it look like we shot it with a shallow depth of field. So we're going to go to Filter, Blur, and then I'm going to go to Field Blur. There we go. And I'm going to bring this right down here and kind of crank up this blur just a little bit. There we go. And then click up on the top and then bring that blur all the way down to 0. So here we're going to get a constant blur from down here all the way to the top. You could use like iris or a tilt shift as well, but I really like this field blur. I think it's just kind of cool because you can place these blurs wherever you want them to go. All right, that looks good. Let's hit OK right up here. And it's going to apply our blur. And then the last thing we're going to do is apply a little bit of noise. So anytime I do like a fake blur like this in Photoshop, because it does look a little bit fake, I think it works a lot better if you add some noise over top. So we're going to go to Filter, down here to Noise, and I'm going to go to Add Noise. There we go, and we are clicked on monochromatic because we don't want color noise on here. So let's click on monochromatic, and this is looking pretty good. We're just going to hit OK, and there we can see, let's just zoom in so we can see the before and after. So there's the before, which kind of looks fake. There's the after. At least it looks, well, it looks grainy, but it looks a lot more like it was done straight out of camera. All right, guys, and that's it. So going from, let's just go ahead and group all those layers. So we'll show you guys the before and the after. And I think you can see how like it's a lot more impactful in the after, and it does create something with like a different feeling in the image. So that's it, guys. Guys, thanks so much for watching Phlearn. I hope you enjoyed this video showing you guys some of the ideas behind shooting black and white, as well as Photoshop on how to turn your color images into black and white. If you like what we got going on here at Phlearn, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, comment, and share with everyone you know. Tell us what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and let me know what you guys want to learn as well. Thanks so much, and stay tuned for our next video where we're going to pick up where we left off and show you some other great uses for black and white, as well as some different tools in Photoshop on how to get there.